All right, back again. Poor bastards. Poor bastards, frying your brains on a Sunday even. Shouldn't be allowed, I guess. Anyway, so just had done the Wooble. It's really important because it describes all of this kind of stuff at a physics level, which I'll divert to that at some point. Personalities in physics and that sort of thing. This is a much lighter kind of discussion. Okay, so we find design patterns everywhere. And the ultimate design pattern for universe, for materium, is binary. For universe, the materium is inside universe, so that's also binary. Universe is inside the field, that's binary. The field is inside the ether, and so that's binary. And it works all the way through. You know, we got men and women in spite of, otherwise insistence. We've got, light and dark, cold, it goes everywhere. It's just constant that way. And even within the binary, though, it's gradations. It's binary all the way down and all the way up. So it's, we get aggregations in order to create the large of smaller effects all throughout our universe and throughout our reality. Now, the Wooble, this understanding of it, the idea that this is how waves come into existence, this is how magnetism comes into existence in the materium, is pertinent because we're getting to that point where every single day now there's some kind of new UFO disclosure coming out of the USA officialdom. And insofar as me, I live in the USA, so as far as I'm concerned, USA officialdom is pretty much top dog officialdom on the planet. The big kahuna there, right? And so I have a tendency to watch what they do. I don't believe what they say, but I watch what they do. And the fact that we've had an increasing number of UFO reports and affirmations and acknowledgments ahead of any official information coming out of the administration is telling in a couple of ways. One could speculate, oh, look, maybe the Biden crew is going to try and delay things and not do it because of the impact, and they don't want to be the ones in charge when this impact comes out. And so they would do everything they can and put it under some kind of a Warren Commission, seal it for 25 years and not worry about it. All right, so that might be what they are doing, and therefore the people that are leaking the information now from previous administrations who are affirming the existence of UFOs and who are using language describing the UFOs as being sentiently controlled and able to manipulate us at a huge level, at an ultimate level, are doing so because they're going to sort of, so to speak, cut the legs out from underneath any effort to contain this information in its little box any longer. Getting back to the language for a second, we see that the releases about the UFOs are now talking about, Woolsey, the head of the CIA under Clinton. Bear in mind, the CIA was created by Truman out of the OSS to deal with the UFO issue. All the other spy shit, all the drug shit, that's all ancillary to the UFO issue. It was created in 1948 to deal with the UFO issue, which had arisen in 1947. So any other explanation is bogus. So the CIA, Woolsey, under Clinton, coming out the other day saying that he personally had been skeptical about UFOs until a friend of his was in an airplane, a private airplane, that was paused at 40,000 feet, engines running, air flowing, everything regular. It just stopped and held there by this UFO thingy. So Woolsey at that point decided, there's something to these UFOs. Bullshit. He was read into it earlier. This is the cover story he's putting out. Listen to the language there. because it tells everything. They were able to grab an airplane and stop it. Okay, so that shows the level of power that he's trying to communicate. The fact that they paused it and didn't kill the people or anything contributes to the idea that this was done as a sentient act, or an act by a sentient being, somebody who wanted to examine but not damage. Okay, so a hurricane can damage and destroy you and pick you up and throw you 1,000 miles and destroy you, but it's not sentient, because it's not ever going to take your well-being or corporeal form into account. So that level of force of a hurricane is comparable to what happened to the airplane in some broad sense, but the level of sentiency is not active in the hurricane or the tornado, etc., right? But it was in this airplane. And so we get this idea that there's a mind that did this to these people. And then he's also saying that in other words through this particular article. And then they're releasing it now, very shortly after the release of information about the little twirly tetrahedrons in the sky following the USS Russell off of the coast of San Diego. Coast of San Diego is interesting too, off the coast there. Now, today, we get further confirmation, the Pentagon coming out and saying that yes, the shit the Navy released is real. So now we have organizational personas stepping up the imagery in our mind. Because bear in mind, U.S. Navy's got a lot of cred, right? They got a lot of street cred. They got water cred. they're the, if you want to know something about the water, you go talk to the U.S. Navy. So they got real street cred. They're credible, but they're only a subset of the Pentagon. And so now we have the mama unit saying, yeah, those guys, what they put out was solid. It was good. It was real. So the Pentagon is validating the U.S. Navy. So this is a referential kind of thing as far as the Pentagon is concerned, because their Navy is part of the Pentagon. And so they're sort of, saying, hey, it was us, we did good. But at the same time, we, the perceivers, the consumers of this intergalactic now theater, and we can say that factually. Now that they're starting to talk about UFOs, UFOs ain't coming from Venus, so we can talk intergalactic, inner solar system at least, right? They're coming from some other solar system, if not from some other galaxy. But I like intergalactic, it sounds better. I had to go and get tea between the two videos. So now we have this stepping up of the UFOs, information coming out. And as I said, I had to accelerate. I was planning on getting around to all of this kind of stuff. I wanted to put it out in a much more cohesive, understandable form. I don't know why I don't like academics, but I wanted it to be more academic-like. I like academics. I don't dislike the people. I just dislike the academic mindset. Some of the people are assholes, but that's some of the people everywhere are assholes. Anyway, though, so I'll just refer to them as the Navy. As the Navy keeps putting out more and more information, and as the sequence of events starts becoming crammed into it as we go forward, I had been plotting that the emotional tension would peak around June the 4th. I see now, just based on the last 3 days, that estimate may be lacking. I mean, it may have overshot. Then it may not be about the 4th of June. It might be some little point earlier in May. So the necessity of accelerating and getting all this stuff out so that we have an understanding of the woo people, of what we're going to be looking at when the normies are going into shock and doing, the Frankenstein dance where they just sit there and sort of vibrate and cause problems. And we'll have to set them down, sit down, Charlie, it'll be okay, don't worry about it. We saw this shit coming. So anyway, that kind of thing, right? So by the way, all right, so I should have said this in the last video and I can add it later. In the Wooble, the magnetism effect, this particular point from which light and the dielectric plane exist, that angle right there is significant. So this angle here is significant. And I've thought of ways that we could actually measure that particular angle and be able to get all kinds of information about the function and health, so to speak, of the pulse at that level. I don't think that I'll live long enough to see the technology arrive to do that, but it is possible. And that angle is significant because at this angle is the creation of light. And if we were to do things at a macro level, based in terms of as this stuff scales up, if we're doing something up here and we can determine this particular angle right there, then we should be able to create in a way that is not LED fashion, not by skipping an electron across these two gaps, but by literally just simply holding an electron. An electron is, the atomist understanding of it, but you'd be holding the charge trapped because of a very specific angle, because of a very specific gap structure. And I don't know that we can actually fabricate it at this point because we're going to be talking things that were extremely fine. So where we went from having to flow electricity through elements in order to get those elements to glow and give us light, and then we created this situation where we skip electricity through these two gaps to create LEDs, and that took us down orders of magnitude in energy consumption to create much more light. This angle function aspect of it would take it down even further because you'd only have to charge it like a capacitor and it would glow, right? It would just sit there and glow until you did something to disrupt that charge. And it's because the charge would always be in a state of discharging and would be constantly causing this particular angle to exist at a much greater level in the macrosphere, so to speak, right? Because this is the ultimate microsphere. Sorry. I mean, I hate these thoughts come in, and it's difficult. And I feel for people like Eric Weinstein. He's in a kerfuffle with, on the YouTube, in the internet with Joe Rogan and some people, and I've got to really go and look at it because I don't think they were really fighting. I think that little video I saw was some kind of a parody sort of a video, but it looked like they were really scrapping there for a minute, and I'd hate to see that. But I understand Eric, right? He's one of these people that views everything in the sense of mathematics, and so his mind has a mathematics filter, and he finds it very difficult to communicate with everybody else, and he considers everybody else a normie, and he's not a normie, right? Crap, shit going on. Anyway, so I feel for him. And the way academia is, the way that academics, the people that tend to gravitate towards academia and then become successes in them, in spite of, and I buy his whole thing about he's been maliciously sidelined. I mean, that was obvious, okay? Because the technology in the form of the mathematics that he was proposing would have been devastating to the deep state. Would have fucked him in the ass. Just seriously done him over. But in any event, so he gets sidelined. And so he gets somewhat bitter. That's my take on it. And so he gets, and that was his great achievement, right? It's like an incredibly difficult thing to accept, that you're in a business of being smart. You're in a business of having good ideas. You know that your mind will deteriorate at a specific age if you're smart about it. Smart is intelligence applied to itself. And so you really worry about that, and you wonder, will I be able to achieve before that starts happening? And then your great achievement happens, right? Should be this finger, but your great achievement happens, and they throw it away. Not only do they throw it away, they bury the fucker. And so, man, you know, like I say, I've got a knot in my stomach from my understanding of how that all happened. It's just not right. I like ideas, but here, anyway, ideas need to be tested, and they need to be found solid or not, right? And so ideas and men, what's the old saying? As steel is tested by steel, ideas are tested, and men are tested by other ideas and other men. And so, you know, Eric, he lost a battle. And, you know, he can be somewhat touchy about it, I guess. I would be too. Well, I probably wouldn't. I smoke too much pot. You know, it's like, fuck, I don't give a shit about the reputation and that kind of stuff. I'm a Sigma, so I'm different from Eric. But in any event, though, but we were talking about the same stuff that Eric thinks about, his geometric unity. Just as an aside, if Eric should ever watch this, Eric, I believe you would be well advised to read into Boscovich. And you'll see, I think, in the first parts of part 1, why I recommend this and why it is so fitting with your geometric unity idea, and why, to a certain extent, I think with geometric unity, you were reinventing what Boscovich and the radical etherists like myself already know and are promulgating. You know, we want you to come over, dude, come over. You know, chuck the quantum physics shit and come on over to the radical ether side. You know, we got better dope. So anyway, that kerfuffle and Eric and all of his problems aside, the understanding of the Wooble is key, I think, at this particular point in time because of the UFOs. Because the UFOs are appearing now, because we're going to have this destiny, meet up with destiny with them, you know, our destiny with the UFOs is coming soon, regardless of apparently whether Biden wants to, you know, strangle it or not. It looks like it's coming out. The military is going to do it and basically fuck them. That's what I've said, was that some colonel somewhere would be the one that would release it. Well, apparently it's happened, and it is happening. And it's coming out of the military. And they're doing it linguistically like I presumed that they might. Like one of the more sound paths for describing these things and for getting them out is a particular mindset in terms of how you approach it, right? And they appear to be using that mindset in the linguistics that's showing up so far. Regardless of who's doing it, when the military comes in, they're doing a very nice, consistent response. And so we're building. Our emotional tension is building. I think it may be May-ish, end of May-ish, we'll see, and there'll be some kind of a reveal. That reveal is going to bring into question all kinds of physics, but from that point on, we humans have an issue. And so I don't want to sound like an egoist, right? I don't want to sound like I'm egotistical. But I needed to do the Wooble video and these others ahead of time, ahead of the UFOs showing up, so that we humans can say, hey, look, we knew that shit. Humans knew that shit in the past. Even this batshit crazy etherist guy over here knew it, right? So we're not dependent. So in the future, when our society collides with the UFOs, we can say to ourselves, we are not inferior. We're just late arrivals, right? We're just now getting started. We've had a tough go of it. Our planet's gotten the shit kicked out of it, and we've been repeatedly bashed back to near extinction, and so we're just getting recovered. And so look at how cool we are that we got to the same level as these UFO guys. Now, true, we can't yet produce, as far as I know, we can't yet reproduce their spaceships and so on. But we understand, we now have an operating theory, admittedly bizarrely named the Wooble, and it derives from the little bloop theory and cooperates with that, for how all of this stuff is being done, all right? At a fundamental physics level, for how all this shit works. So in my way of thinking, in just a few weeks, we're going to be in a collision. We're going to be in that collision where a superior technology, social order, is introduced to the inferior social order guys. That's us. We're the tribal guys, right? And so in a few weeks, our tribe is going to be introduced to the grander civilization of the space aliens. And our minds are going to have to cope with that. And one of the things that our minds are going to have to cope with that is in our collective view of ourselves. If you will, our collective ego, right? Because, see, we're going to be told stuff that's going to say, ooh, geez, Einstein, oh, it's a cringe moment. Oh, no, push him out of there, you know. So a lot of our science is going to go that way, which is going to make us feel bad. But it need not, right? Because we would have replicated, if we'd had enough time prior to them showing up here, now that someone, meaning me, and I don't take any real credit for it, ideas happen and you just run into them and that's the way it is. But we've got the Wooble. And so we understand how this works. We can take our oscilloscopes and start modifying, understand at a very primary level of creation how all of the Wooble is working and how it is functioning at that level, and the marvelous things that we can do technically from this understanding, right? So in my thinking, the space aliens make a spark, at a particular point, a spark, a magnetic kind of a spark, at a particular point in the Wooble, at that point where light comes from, and that's where they create their magnetic wave that they use as an impelling device to impel their ship from point A to point B. So that's the mechanism whereby Woo ships get activated and moved. And because you're stopping time in the process, that's why it can be made to be so rapid. The Virgin. Yeah, I can't wait for my flying RV. Anyway, so, but we're going to be put into a serious world of hurt. All right, Earth is going to hurt. Humanity will hurt as a result of the collision of our culture with the UFOs as it comes out of the top dog officialdom here on the planet. And so we need to understand that we're pretty special guys. All throughout our history, we've been pretty special guys. We had an understanding of this in the 1200s with Boscovich and stuff. And so it's not like we're inferior. We're just, as I say, a little late arrival to this particular, well, we've had a hard time of it as humans. And we can take a certain amount of pride, I think, in being human and coming through it and getting as far as we have within this short period of time. So now, also in my opinion, the thing to do is to take the idea of the Wooble, which is sort of like a theory of everything, and use that as a springboard for when we start having to deal with these technologies that are going to soon start impinging on our consciousness that is officialdom controlled. And so that's going to make a big difference. I'm really convinced of that. Academia is going to be reeling. So it's going to take all of the woo people that will say, hot damn, I want to make myself an RV out of one of those things, to convert this and basically do something that humans do well. And we appropriate culture. We appropriate technology. We steal from each other. That's what spying is about. That's what the CIA is about. You know, vast quantities of spying goes on constantly, all trying to basically steal information from each other. And so when the space aliens get here, they're not going to know what happened. They're not going to know what hit them. They've landed on a pirate's island. So I say we appropriate their technology, do what we do best, which is to mod it, make it our own, and off we go. And, you know, good chaga to you guys. So, mahalo, with respect. So we'll steal it, but with respect.